listening to Coffee with Kenobi. You are with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is yes.
Previously on Coffee with Kenobi.
I gotta say, Dan, your doctor sounds really impressive.
Yeah, he's really cool.
Sounds like he has a lot of patience.
I knew by the candor of your voice.
Well, I am leaving the bad jokes to you.
Thank you. I'll be here all podcast.
This is Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dula from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
You can always count on Darth Taxis to put a smile on your face. Hello, everybody, and welcome to show number 130 of Coffee with Kenobi, your spoiler-free place for Star Wars discussion, analysis, and rhetoric. I'm your host, Dan Z, drinking One Nation coffee out of a Coffee with Kenobi logo mug. Thank you so much for joining me today as we sit back and have some Star Wars conversation. Of course, our goal is always to have you think about the mythology of Star Wars in a whole new way and maybe laugh a little bit in the process. And on today's show, we have Stephen from Roku Depot and Phil from One Nation Coffee, focusing on Lando Calrissian in Solo, a Star Wars story, as well as his overall sort of story in the world of Star Wars through the comics, through The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and of course again through Solo, a Star Wars story. We got a lot of great feedback from you on our first character breakdown on Han Solo himself, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this transpires over the next month or so. In the interview segment, I'm going to talk with Phil about One Nation Coffee, how it all got started, and really learn a lot about the coffee making process. It's a really fascinating conversation you're going to love. In the news segment, Tom Gross is back to join us to talk about some exciting things from Funko Pop that are going to be at San Diego Comic-Con, as well as what's going on with Galaxy's Edge, and a little more background on an article I did recently for StarWars.com. In the coffee chat, we'll talk a little bit more about Lando and Han, and specifically about Sabacc and the implications of what happens in that final game between the two before Han wins the Falcon. And it's interesting to hear their perspectives. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi.
And now, let's see what's brewing in the Star Wars universe this week.
It really is starting to hit me that in 1 month I'm going to be at San Diego Comic-Con for the very first time. Now this is going to be really cool because of course my entire life I've heard about Comic-Con, I've seen things about it, I've watched stuff, I've read about it, I've heard people talk about it, but I'm going to actually get to experience it for the first time and hopefully meet a lot of you there as well. And I'll have the microphone with me to interview you and talk to you about different Star Wars topics that you want to discuss. And there'll be interviews with a lot of Star Wars authors and personalities, and it's going to be tremendous. Let me know what you want to see me cover at San Diego Comic-Con and what you're interested in, and I will do my best to make that happen for members of our Coffee with Kenobi family.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first.
Joining us today for a cup of coffee is Roku Depot's co-founder, Stephen.
Hey, Dan. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you on, sir. And of course, those of you who are Star Wars fans, longtime Star Wars fans, know that Stephen and Roku Depot is one of the leading sounding boards and review sites for Star Wars and all kinds of great fandom. And you also do a weekly podcast review. And I don't know how you find the time to do that, but I am really grateful because it always points me towards new and exciting shows.
That's very kind of you.
Absolutely. Also joining us today, his first appearance on a podcast, the co-founder of One Nation Coffee, Phil, and is it Moniz?
Moniz, yeah.
Bill Moniz. Phil, welcome to Coffee with Kenobi.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Gentlemen, we have a great show lined up today. Last week, we started our character breakdown of Solo, a Star Wars story. We talked a lot about Han Solo. This week, we're going to look at Lando Calrissian. But before we do, Stephen and I were chatting a little bit on Twitter, and Stephen was talking about, naturally, for the huge Solo review show, I talked quite a bit about my consternation over thinking of the Millennium Falcon as a character. That, of course, led to a conversation about L3 and how much of a presence L3 has in the Falcon. And then, Stephen, you had a tweet that really kind of added some more, I think, to this conversation. It really made me think a lot about it. Could you share that with us?
Yeah, basically I was just playing devil's advocate, but it came to me that it was kind of odd that they have restraining bolts for droids if they don't have free will. If droids don't have free will, why would you need a restraining bolt? They're programmed to serve, so they'll do what you say. But if they do have some measure of free will, it might not be entire, but if there's some measure to it, then that would make sense why they would need restraining bolts, so they would have complete control.
Very, very interesting food for thought. I'm curious what people are thinking as they're listening to this. Phil, do you have any immediate thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I never really thought about it, but after watching the movie, you could almost maybe say that it's a developing AI that allows it to move into free will, maybe, which would cause the need for a restraining bolt. And if I guess you look at it, if you look at it towards future, how we're looking at AI right now, that would go with it. Granted, that's a long time ago, but so yeah, I'm not real sure. So.
I think I've been thinking about this a little bit, and I guess I've always sort of thought of droids, especially R2-D2 in particular, because he's kind of the standard for that. I mean, C-3PO is too, but R2 even more so, because R2 clearly is a bit more free-spirited, I think, for many, many, many years in the world of Star Wars. I guess I kind of think of droids as like a dog. And a dog certainly appears to have a mind of its own and definitely has moods and gets excited and all of those things. However, when it comes down to it, a dog operates from a place of instinct, right? It's not like it's consciously doing certain specific things. It operates from a place of instinct. It doesn't have a free will and can't think creatively. So from that perspective, I guess I've always sort of subconsciously thought of droids as being somewhat operating not from a place of instinct, but from a place of programming, which is very similar to instinct from an AI perspective. So I think from that point of view, I think there may be a bit of a trick. I don't know. It might be a new hybrid thing. It'd be if I ever get Dave on the show, Dave Filoni, I want to ask him that.
Actually, I like what Phil brought up with it being like a developing AI. Perhaps the longer a droid goes without a mind wipe, the more sentience it builds up.
Yeah, that's cool too. Isn't it interesting that all this time, I don't remember a show ever talking about this. So that might have to be something that warrants its own particular conversation altogether. I love that. I love that. Well, let's talk about Lando. Of course, we can talk about L3 with Lando, I suppose. But Lando Calrissian, of course, since 1980 has been an important aspect of the Star Wars saga. Of course, the original owner of the Falcon, at least before Han Solo had it. So what do we think about Lando and his presence in Solo: A Star Wars Story? What does this story add to his character and kind of his overall mythology? And Stephen, let's start with you.
Well, listening to previous shows and how you're talking about how like Han, his character doesn't really change, I was kind of thinking about that with Lando. And in this movie, his character really doesn't change. He ends in the same place he started, trying to cheat at cards. But along the way, you do learn more about Lando. I mean, we get to see his relationship with L3, and we get to see him interact with other people at different levels. So we do learn more about him, but we don't really see him change in this. But it is interesting just to get to see more of Lando and see more of who he is.
Yeah, Phil, what about you? Like Stephen was saying, I don't think that Solo, and I know you've heard the previous shows too, I don't think Solo changes all that much, if at all. In fact, I've been thinking about this even more. And at the end, when they give him, there are a couple of opportunities for him to change. One is his showdown with Beckett. Two is when his reactions to Kira at the end. And then three is when he talks with Enfys Nest. And she says, hey, we could use you. And he says, no. I mean, that was his moment to change, right? That was his moment to say, I'm living for someone else besides a one-time deal. And because he doesn't, I think that is where the opportunity was missed. With Lando, and I think I agree with you, Stephen, I don't see really much change with Lando at all, besides the fact that we do see a little bit more about the background of him, but I don't see a lot of change. But we do learn a little bit more about kind of what makes him tick, because in The Empire Strikes Back, he's already pretty well established with where he is, and he's at a place of somewhat respectability. I mean, he is, the administrator of Cloud City, whereas in this, he's just kind of given up the smuggler game, or at least he says he has, but of course that's not really the case. Phil, what was your impressions of Lando and what you learned about him through Solo: A Star Wars Story?
Yeah, so I mean, if you take it back to the Empire, where you first meet him, like you never really get to fully develop Lando in the original trilogy. So I think this kind of helps you delve a little bit deeper into him. But even in this, it seems like you only get snippets of his development. Like you don't get a full thing. I do like where, and hopefully are we kind of past the spoiler alert part on this, or do I need to be careful about that?
No, I think you're safe.
Okay, cool. You just want to make sure. So like, I do feel like you get a little bit deeper connection, whether he grows or not. I can't really say one way or the other, but I definitely see a deeper, side of him when it comes to his emotions, especially his relationship with L3. And I will say that it does seem like he puts off at the beginning of the movie that very cool, and he's the coolest guy in the world anyway, but he's very cool in the beginning. But as you start to see his relationship with L3 as it moves towards the end, it's kind of surprising that he doesn't hold a harder attachment to the Millennium Falcon, because L3 becomes part of the Millennium Falcon when they hook her up to it. So I kind of was a little bit surprised that if he was that committed to her when she went down, that he wouldn't be that much more attached to the ship and not even want to bet it at the end.
True, but that just again shows sort of the incredible confidence that goes beyond confidence. It's certainly a brand of arrogance, but he's certainly got all the tools. You know, he's charming, he's good looking, he's smart, he's well dressed, he's got a good, strong reputation. And I really like the moment when he says, "Everything you've heard about me is true." And he doesn't really designate, good, bad, or indifferent. He just wants you to think about that. And I think the strongest we've ever seen Lando, I think, might be in the Lando Calrissian original comic book miniseries that came out, I believe, it was either late 2015 or early 2016. And that was a wonderful book where we got to see a little bit more about Lobot and his relationship with Lobot. It would have been nice to see Lobot in this one, but maybe that will come later. But that was where we see more of a nuanced Lando, who is very much clever and slick, but he also is kind of playing possum. He's much more fearsome and deadly with a blaster, and much more of a fierce combatant than he might originally let on. And I think even in this, his moment of combat really is just really one instance, and he's there, but he's more or less, kind of cleaning up some of the mess, but then he's trying to rescue L3 and he gets lost in that. So I don't think that this movie adds a lot to him. It just gives us a little bit more of kind of the nice points about him that we enjoy. I mean, Donald Glover is clearly a strong selling point regardless, but I don't feel so torn about this one and him not being a changed or nuanced character, because it's not called Lando, a Star Wars story.
I do have to say that, like, if you close your eyes when you first are introduced to him in this, you could almost hear Billy D. Williams. They did a great job in casting that. I mean, he really does. The voice is projecting how he talks. I think they really did well when it came to getting that character and keeping it true to what it was back at Empire.
Oh, I agree. In fact, I would almost go so far as to say it's not almost, it is. It's almost uncanny how dead on it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never questioned that he was Lando in the movie.
No, not for one moment. Not for one moment. And Steven, I know you've read the Lando series. Do you think that gives you more of a well-rounded picture of Lando than this film does?
It's actually funny you said that, because knowing that the topic today was going to be Lando, I actually reread the whole thing today.
Oh, wow.
And it really does match up pretty good with what we've seen in Solo. I mean, there's no real contradictions with it. It still holds up. And it's kind of interesting to see some of the parallels between his relationship with L3 and then his relationship with Lobot. And it's almost like his relationships are almost progressing in a way.
I like that.
More of a deeper attachment.
What do you think about his? Let's talk about his relationship with L3. It's a bit ambiguous. And I know I've had different people ask me, "Are we supposed to think that Lando has like a romantic relationship with L3?" And I said, "I don't think so. I mean, I find that somewhat surprising. I know when I saw the film for the first time, in those scenes were happening when L3 and Kira were talking in the cockpit, I never for one second thought that was real, even though I could see that they wanted you to sort of think that, at least for a hot minute. It's clearly L3 is just sort of, personality and her she's very much delusional in a lot of aspects, as far as, how she is perceived, I think, from Lando's point of view. But he clearly has strong affection for her. And what do you think about that? Let's just hit that first, and then I want to ask you both about his reactions to what happens to her.
I think it's best to leave that point ambiguous, so it works better for all viewers because you can see it the way you want to see it. Because it can be funny to see it where they maybe did have a relationship somehow at some point, or it can work better for someone to just think that they're close and L3 is being quippy about it. But either way, they do have an attachment because we see Lando risk his life to try and save L3.
Yeah.
And so he definitely has a deep attachment to L3.
Yeah, I would almost call it like either like a sister or a child relationship when it comes to Lando to L3, and then the L3 to Lando might be, a little bit more, or even almost like a dog to a master kind of thing. How that attachment is there from L3 to Lando, and I guess that it's like an unconditional relationship, not necessarily like a romantic kind of thing, but a very, very deep seated. You've been together for a while. There's gonna be that really strong attachment.
Well, she says that line, oh, it works, and everyone laughs uncomfortably. So that's the thing where you just think, oh boy, I'm not sure where to go with this. But I do believe that, and one of the things that first sort of struck me about this moment is that Lando is in fact that charming and that charismatic that even his droid, who clearly has a mind of her own and doesn't want to deal with some of Lando's silliness, even she can't help but be charmed by him. So I think it was more of a setup for him and what kind of impact he has on people and in beings around him than anything else.
Yeah, I can definitely get that.
Yeah.
So his reactions, his very visceral reactions to what happens to her. I mean, I think it's fair to say, at least from what we've seen in this film, even though L3 is not a human being, this might be the closest he has to an actual relationship, a platonic relationship with someone, because clearly there's a bond there. Clearly they've been through a lot together. You can tell the way they're synced when they both when they go to light speed and they do that little, that little Top Gun finger flick. So I think that may add some of it. I think it was almost a bit maudlin, maybe in some parts towards the end, but clearly that shows not only does he have a strong relationship with L3, but it also shows that he is in need of something more in his life, right? He's got the Falcon, he's got his droid, but he appears to not have any strong ties to anybody from that's human. And I think that is something that is missing in his life. And that's, of course, where I think leads he and Han to having a stronger bond as time goes on.
Yeah, and I think psychologically too, with his character, he plays it cool, like he doesn't need anybody, but that personality definitely has to have contact constantly with whether it's people or droids or other beings, I guess.
No, I see that.
Dan, I can't remember. Have you read Last Shot yet?
I have. I'm finished with it now.
Okay. Well, I say in there we did actually finally get to see Lando in a relationship, so that was kind of interesting to see.
I was glad that you brought Last Shot up because I was going to talk about that a little bit too. I've never formally talked about it at great length on the show because I just recently finished it. But what do you think about his characterization in there? I mean, he clearly has found a bit of an Achilles heel in his love interest. What do you think about Last Shot overall?
In the greater scheme of things, I think it's interesting to see how his relationships are involving. He goes from having a very close relationship to a droid, to a very close relationship to an android, and then finally a close relationship to an actual human being, or at least an alien, a Twi'lek.
Yeah.
So he's moving up in the world in that regard.
He is. She's almost like too perfect, really, because I mean, a lot of the Twi'leks are very much put on. They're almost like a Greek muse, so to speak, because they're always very beautiful and very, very clever and strong. The only thing that kind of not that kind of hit me about Last Shot that I wasn't as excited about is I feel like they just made Lando kind of a one-trick pony. I think with any of these characters, if you just make their character about sexuality and there's no nuance to them or there's no other things about them, I just don't think that's as interesting. But I think that's kind of a disservice to what this character has to offer. Now, I'm not saying that's what the author did with Last Shot, but I do feel like it becomes a bit more redundant when we talk about the fact that he's charming, he's clever, he is attracted to this Twi'lek, or people are attracted to him. I feel like they should present more of what makes Lando tick. Does that make sense?
I think it's kind of a writer's trap with Lando, because everyone who tries to write a Lando story, that's where they start with, is that he's a ladies' man sort of a thing. And then eventually by the end of the story, you see a different side of him. But they always start from that beginning point where he's this very simplified, one-track ladies' man sort of persona.
I agree. It's very much like they make that him instead of that being an aspect of him, which I know I've talked about that a lot more. Well, then let's talk a little bit about where Lando is once we get to Return of the Jedi, because in Empire, heck, even my little boy thought Lando was cool, even in spite of all those things that happened with Lando. And you can't help but think about the Billy D. Williams comments, about how for years and years, and even now, people say, "Why did you betray Han Solo?" But I think we see in Return of the Jedi and a little bit in Empire, Lando wants to be in charge. He wants to be responsible. Old habits die hard, right? We know this. It's just a human nature thing. But he shows his leadership. He shows his intelligence. He shows that there is more to him than just being, a charming guy. And I think that's really, really cool. So seeing stories about Lando after Return of the Jedi, I think, show more of an arc for him as a character. And we don't really see a ton of that happening in Solo. Now, we don't necessarily have to. But I do think it's cool to see where he is in Solo versus where he is in Return of the Jedi. I don't think he has as much room for growth as Solo does. Solo needs to learn more about responsibility for others. And Lando just needs to learn to kind of, I don't know, I guess, they're both selfish, but what would you say is the difference between Lando and Han Solo as far as their perception of self versus others?
I would say that if you want to go the differences, Lando's selfish in the sense that he wants attention all brought on him. He wants to kind of be that, like I said, the cool guy, the swagger and everything like that, the ladies' man, whatever he wants to be, have those relationships with everybody around him. Whereas Han kind of is more of a I don't want to call it a closed off, but even though he's very cool and he's, got that swagger to him, but he's more, I can't think of the word I'm looking for right now, but basically an introvert in the sense of he doesn't want to be in the middle of the crowd.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think that's pretty astute. Stephen, anything on the difference between those two?
It's kind of hard to pin down because there's a lot of similarities to them, and their differences are kind of subtle, where you get, Lando is more fashion-oriented and Han's not. They both really don't have a lot of friends. They both tend to go on these gambles and long shots. Han's a little quicker to choose a cause than Lando is, so Lando's a little slower to get onto that journey, because where Han's already joining a cause in A New Hope, Lando doesn't join the cause until Return of the Jedi. So it's a very subtle difference between the two.
It is. I don't know that I've ever really thought about it before until this conversation. And also with Lando, he is, even though he's a bit of a scoundrel, obviously, too, he's still more mature, I think, than Han Solo in many ways. He's a bit more responsible. He's better with money. He doesn't have people constantly trying to chase him and get money from him. He's not always running from trouble. In many ways, he kind of causes trouble, but he appears to be much more of a master of his own destiny than Han does, I think.
I would almost say, too, though, that if you take it from where we're at Solo all the way to Return of the Jedi, that I guess Lando, at the end of that, you definitely see where, like you said, Han has a cause, and Han kind of, has that change of where he does focus in and have a purpose. Whereas Lando, I feel like even at the end of Return of the Jedi, he's still kind of out for himself, where it's like, and maybe it's not overt, but I think deep down you kind of always get that feeling like, can you really trust that guy to back everyone up? You might back Han up, but is he going to split at the first chance he gets, or the better opportunity?
Right, which is why the end of The Empire Strikes Back is so incredibly powerful and poignant, for sure. So let's go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk with Philip a little bit more about his views of Star Wars, but more particularly about One Nation Coffee, which, of course, as you've heard me talk about for quite a while now, is the official brew of Coffee with Kenobi. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Coffee with Kenobi.
So much of what goes into Coffee with Kenobi cannot happen without our amazing CWK Patreon family members, like Ben Elkington, Rebecca Raven, Terry Lee, Dennis Keithley, Lieutenant Law, Aaron Harris, Chris Gavarka, Angela Sauce, Mediocre Jedi, Chris Metz, LJ Souter, Thea Selby, Jeff Ellis, Daz Davies, Christian Dale, Jason Hall, Brian McKinney, Connie Shee, Mike Audette, Jared Cantor, BJ Smith, Eric Struthers, Nick Dico, and Mark Suter. The number one draw for Coffee with Kenobi as far as benefits for you as a Patreon contributor. When you help out our show, you get access to our CWK Lens, which is like Snapchat or Insta Story, where I can show you behind-the-scenes photos and videos or commentary of what goes on into making this show, as well as all the travel that we do. And as we get closer to San Diego Comic-Con, you can be guaranteed exclusives that you're going to see here first before they go to Instagram or Twitter or anywhere else, as well as private messages I will send to our CWK Patreon members that you can only see through Patreon. So that's great. But the number one thing that I'm most proud of is our CWK Pour Over. It's our exclusive show that has myself, Tom Gross, and Corey Club talking about a number of Star Wars and other genre and geek topics, and it's very, very authentic. There's no real outline. It's more like, hey, here's some bullet points of ideas we want to talk about, and we let this conversation go where it's going to go. And it's really great because I feel like it's such an accurate representation of what it would be like to listen to myself, Tom, and Corey talking together over one whole pot of coffee. And the shows come out on Sundays, and they're about 30 minutes to 35 minutes in length. So it literally is like, hey, let's have one pot of coffee and let's talk a little bit, and we'll see you later. It's gone great. The conversation, the feedback has been tremendous. And again, it's something special just for Coffee with Kenobi Patreon members. I highly recommend that you check it out. And then I get access to our back category of shows as well. So you should have, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 12 shows out there right now that you can catch up on. And again, it's only $5 a month. So it's really, really a great deal. There are also coffee mugs and t-shirts and phone cases you can get, as well as if you contribute for a certain amount, you can co-host the regular show with me, Coffee with Kenobi, 4 times in 1 month. So be sure to go to www.patreon.com/coffeewithkenobi for more information and find out how you can get access to CWK Pour Over and help contribute to our show. Thank you so much. One Nation Coffee is the official brew of Coffee with Kenobi. You have 4 lifelong friends that had this idea that grew into some of the best coffee you will ever have. It smells amazing and tastes even better. And now they even have a subscription service that is really convenient, so you'll never ever run out of coffee. And with this stuff, you're not going to want to run out because it is really the best. Be sure to go to www.onenationcoffee.com today to order the official brew of Coffee with Kenobi and add in the discount section, Kenobi10, to get 10% off your order. We are back, and as promised, we're going to talk with Phil about One Nation Coffee. But Phil, before we get into that, tell us about your connection to Star Wars and what first brought you into this saga.
Well, I can remember back, I was probably maybe 4 or 5 years old, as far back as I can actually remember anything. Watching, I think it was actually The Empire Strikes Back was the first one I watched on just like a little like black and white TV with a VCR, just the cruddiest, picture you could possibly get, and falling in love with it. And then later on realizing, that there was actually a sequence to it. And I probably didn't, really figure that out until, probably 10, 11, 12, somewhere around there. And then we obviously had that nice long gap before we had anything with, with the prequels and so on. But ever since then, I've always been a huge Star Wars fan, and more so than any other storyline. And I get wrapped into certain stories and series, but Star Wars has always been like probably the strongest one that I've ever had.
It's the one that we always keep coming back to. It's always sort of at the foreground of just sort of our little passions in geekdom and pop culture and things like that. So you must have a favorite movie or favorite character or particular storyline that you've always liked.
Yeah, actually, and so my favorite movie is Empire. That's all, and that's a staple. Like it doesn't. I don't think any of them have been better than that, even though, the technology's changed. That storyline is always, and my favorite has always been Hoth. Like that opening scene with when you got the AT-ATs coming in, that always blew my mind. Like always been fascinated in those things. Probably identify myself more as Obi-Wan if I had to choose one that I feel like would kind of be someone that I would identify with. But I definitely like the Vader end of it, where he's got that power, but he's also got that internal struggle of wanting to do what's right. But just the sheer power that guy holds is amazing, and it's fascinating, and I love him. But yeah, between those two, it's kind of hard to tell. But I would probably lean more towards Obi-Wan would be my favorite.
That's really cool, Stephen. I know we're chatting with Phil about One Nation Coffee, but while I have you on, who's your favorite? I never got to ask you any of these things.
Oh, my favorite character?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go a little off the wall here.
Cool.
Jabba the Hutt.
Really, that is off the wall.
Good one.
You're talking about a character here who really doesn't have a character arc. He's not a deep character, but I like strange things. I like the aliens in Star Wars, and there's just something fascinating about Jabba because of all the aliens. He's kind of one of the most powerful aliens you see in the film. So I don't know, there's the gangster mystique to him, and his weird alien friends he's got with him in his lair. I don't know. As a kid, I always thought he was interesting.
So does that mean Jedi is your favorite movie?
When I was a kid, I would have said Empire, but lately I've been saying Return of the Jedi just because there's a lot of different elements there that kind of give it a slight edge now when I look back on it and watch it again. It's a little bit more fun.
It is. It definitely is. It's very there. It's cool how all three of them have very different kind of tones to them. So let's transition back. One Nation Coffee. When you first reached out to me, I don't know, 4 months ago, 5 months ago, something like that.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah, you were kind enough to send me a sample of the coffee, and I've said this in some of the ads, and this is a sponsored segment, but again, even though I'm working with someone in that field, I only do it if I like the brand and the product and the people that I'm working with. And you, my friend, are as real as they come, and your product is amazing. I still, my wife and I still talk about the fact that the very first time you sent One Nation Coffee to our house, my mailbox smelled great. I probably looked really weird smelling my mailbox, but I'm comfortable with that because it's fantastic coffee. How did you come up with this idea for One Nation Coffee? The name, getting everything started. What kind of went into all of this?
Yeah, so funny enough, like when we got the whole thing. Well, even if we go back before that, as I don't know if we kind of. Well, the three of us talked about it prior to the show, but I'm a police officer, and so I've spent a lot of time in gas stations at 3:00 in the morning drinking really, really bad coffee. And so years ago, as I just was one night drinking bad coffee over and over again, I was like, there's got to be a better way, better option than, because at 3:00 in the morning, you're not going to find a Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks or anything like that, where you can get anything more than a burnt cup of coffee. And so I actually started learning how to roast my own coffee on a popcorn machine. And that was fun. It was very smoky. My garage was always, looked like it was on fire, but I made pretty good coffee at the time. At least I think so. It was probably awful, but since I made it, I thought it was great. And then one day, one of my one of my buddies. There was 4 of us on a group chat, and it's two of them are twin brothers, and the other is their cousin. And we were kind of just making some jokes on a group chat one day, and we were talking about like veterans and refugees and stuff like that. And one of the partners goes, "Well, why don't we start a coffee shop?" And I said, "You are out of your mind. Do you know how much work that would be?" And keep in mind, we all live in different areas of the country. And so I said, "Why don't we roast coffee and sell it?" And I'm like, "Okay." So we talked about it, and we kind of got some of the things worked out. And it was kind of a joke for a couple of days, but we started running some numbers and looking into it. And all of a sudden it was like, "Hey guys, we can do this." And so we did. And we ended up getting in contact through some mutual contacts with a local coffee roaster down here called Coastal Coffee Roasters. Met with them and worked out an agreement where we could roast on their machine, because they have a big 12-kilo roaster, which is one of the big machines, which is completely different science from roasting on your popcorn machine. And you would be amazed at how much science goes into actually roasting coffee. It's quite deep. And they have some absolutely great people over there, and they have helped us. We would not be where we're at today if it weren't for them. They've helped us every step of the way. And instead of looking at us as competitors, they looked at us as partners. And so that's how we've kind of maintained that relationship, and we continue to maintain that relationship. And we've kind of let that grow. And we're still growing. We're still a young company. We're a little over a year old. And it's been interesting. One of the big things we decided when we started this company was, obviously we want to make money because we're a for-profit company, but the biggest thing we wanted to do was to be able to make enough money to give back to our communities. And when I say our communities, like the veteran communities, the law enforcement communities, and myself and my partner John are both EOD, or bomb squad guys. And so that's kind of a big push for us. And right now it's me and John that are the partners in this. And so we've just very, very recently, like within a week, we partnered with a foundation called the WLS Foundation, which stands for When Life Sucks Foundation. And great organization here in South Carolina. And they specifically work on helping veterans and law enforcement dealing with PTSD and dealing with suicide issues. And to the point of the founder of the foundation, I mean, he takes phone calls all the time with guys calling him and, having a really bad day. And he's talked him off ledges, like the suicide hotline, basically, is what you would equate it to. And so after meeting with him and really like getting to know him, researching him to find out the foundation, because one of our other big things, we didn't want to give to any kind of foundations that are basically just raking in the money and not helping the people they say they're going to help. So we researched this foundation, and they are truly one of those that they take just enough money to cover their operating costs, and then every last cent that they make goes to helping veterans and law enforcement and trying to work with these communities. And so we're very proud of working with Pat over there. And it's like I said, it's called When Life Sucks Foundation. And if anyone ever wants to check them out, it's whenlifesucks.org. And they really do a good job of helping people.
So basically, you've got a passion project that led from a need for something that you wanted, and then you combine with your friends, and they become like family, and then you're starting to make a difference in the community. And it's an amazing transitional story. But at some point, you had to learn sort of how to make this work. You said you made coffee in your garage with a popcorn maker. I love that image. I think that's really cool. And then, so how did you learn sort of how to brew the coffee? How do you learn like where to find beans? Because you mentioned competitors in other coffee companies. So how did you find something that is just uniquely your own as far as like the bean itself and things like that? Because I'm not sure how it works. I know how it tastes. I know how to make it. So I like it, but that's about it.
Yeah, again, that, like I said, when the science comes to it, it really can be mind blowing if you really start going down that rabbit hole. But basically, what we did is, so when I was doing it on my popcorn machine, I was basically going online, buying green coffee from, just like a Coffee Beans Direct kind of place, where you get like a 1 pound or 2 pound, even maybe like sometimes a 5 pound bag, and we just pop them on there and roast it. And we would try to get it to I would try to get to a certain temperature, before I'd start pulling it off, or I'd start listening for cracks, because you have first crack and second crack, and that's where you really get where you start from your light roast and you start developing all the way up to your darker stuff. And those cracks are it's almost like Rice Krispies, for lack of a better term, but it is a very distinct crack when you get your first one, and then it's a very distinct crack when you get your second one. And that time in between the first and second crack is where you start getting, like you said, your light roast. And once you start at second crack, you're in your medium and quickly moving into your dark roast. So what we ended up doing is, once we decided to take this and make it into a business, did a lot of research, a lot of asking around, a lot of internet time, just trying to figure this thing out. And I finally found a bean broker here in Charleston, and met with them, had some good conversations with them. They kind of walked me through the process, and pretty much what they do is they import, hundreds of thousands of bags of coffee. And when I say a bag of coffee, I'm not talking like your little 1 to 5 pound bags. We buy a 70 kilo bag, which is 154 pounds. It's kind of like dragging a dead body, for lack of a better term, when you try to pick that thing up, because it is heavy, but it's nothing but green coffee. And so we take that, and then what we've done is we have 3 roasts right now. We have a medium, which is a single origin Arabica, and it comes from a little farm in Colombia called Ahuila Farm, and it is an amazing coffee bean. It is absolutely
my favorite. It's my absolute favorite.
Yeah. And that's the Taste Like Freedom. That's the one you like. Yeah. So that's the single origin, and that is just a straight medium. And it, like I said, that is probably one of the highest quality beans. And we technically, we're probably not charging near enough for it, for what it is, because most places, if you take that same bean, they're charging well over what we do. But again, our big goal is to be able to get it, people to be able to afford it, and people to be able to enjoy it, not just, hey, let's make a bunch of money and, forget everyone else. But so then you have our other 2 roasts, which is our JB's Buckshot Blend, which is slightly over medium. And then we have our Moab, which is our dark roast. Those 2 are actually blended with a Vietnamese Robusta bean. And a lot of people don't understand. I want dark coffee. Well, dark coffee is great, but the darker you roast a coffee, the more caffeine you're removing from it. So darker coffee, less caffeine. So what we did is we blended that Robusta bean in there, and gives it that extra caffeine kick, or gets that caffeine back into it. And it's actually a noticeable difference if you drink them side by side. And the other part of it too is, if you did a whole Robusta bean, it's not a high quality bean necessarily, like an Arabica is. But with the Arabica, you don't have the caffeine content. So we just did a small amount of the Robusta to get that extra caffeine pushed back in, but still keeping that really good flavor. And there's a slight texture difference in the 2 beans, but when you blend them, you kind of get the best of both worlds. And my favorite is the JB's. I absolutely drink that pretty much every single day, multiple times a day. And my business partner John, he's up in Maryland right now, and he's active duty in the Navy, senior chief at the EOD up there. But he likes a dark roast. That's his favorite. So yeah.
So you what is the daily operation like at One Nation Coffee? Are you actually, like, when I get a thing of coffee from you guys, are you actually scooping it and like hand by hand, or do you have people that do that for you? How does that even work?
No. I do pretty much most of it down here with the operation side of it. And so the way it works, we roast extremely small batches, because our big thing is, so when I roast a batch of coffee, we try to roast it almost to order, or as close to order as you can get, because the ideal time frame when you roast it is, so you roast it and you've got about a 2 to 3 day window where you want it to off gas. And you can obviously roast it and grind it right there if you want. Most people couldn't tell the difference, but if you wait that 2 to 3 days for it to off gas, that flavor just really comes out of it. And so the goal is for us to roast it, or to actually sell it, roast it, and then when it ships, so by the time it hits your door, which is going to be about a 2 to 3 day period, it is exactly where it needs to be. So when you crack that thing open, it's perfect. It's ready to go. Now, granted, I mean, it's still going to stay good for a time after that, but we want to get it to you where it's just absolutely perfect. And so pretty much the way it works at this time, and as we're growing, things will obviously change a little bit. But so in the mornings, I wake up, I pop on the computer, and I print off any orders that have come up. I take my daughter to school, and the roaster is actually not too far from where my daughter's school is. And then I run down to the roaster, and I'll, if I need to roast right then, we'll do that. And I'll grind it and bag it unless it's a whole bean. I'll bag it, and then I'll slap them in the shipping packages and drop them in the mail, and then head into my regular job at the police department. And
Wow.
And just it makes for some long days. And then depending on what's going on, maybe after work I might come back and roast, or I might, if I'm lucky, I come home actually and spend time with the family. But so
it's fair to say that between you, Stephen, and myself, we get a combined 3 hours of sleep a night, I think.
Yeah, on a good night.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So, but yeah, and it makes it now. Well, the deal we have with the roaster, and again, the guy that roasts over there, his name is Richard. He's a phenomenal roaster. I mean, and I've learned more from this guy than I could ever even tell. But if I run into a situation where, I get a SWAT call out, or I'm dealing with a bomb call out or something like that, or whatever the case is, and I can't get to it, he is right there to step up and help me and make sure that we don't skip a beat on anything. So we've got some good contingency plans in place, and we've got some great people that are that just work with us. So.
I think this is fascinating. Like I don't think in any walk of life, in any profession, in anything that you do, there's so much that goes into this kind of procedure or operation, whether it's podcasting or brewing coffee or running a successful website like Stephen does. There's just so much that goes in behind the scenes, and I think you make it look easy. I've been perusing the site quite a bit because I always like seeing what you guys have going on, and not only do they have amazing coffee and they've got some great merch. In fact, you were kind enough to send me a One Nation Coffee baseball hat, trucker hat. That has become my go-to hat. I think I wear the hat more than I wear a Cubs hat, which is saying a lot, by the way. And those super, super cool.
Those hats, like that was kind of a labor of love getting those hats, because those are the Legacy 92 hats, which when we first started doing hats, we had good ones, but they were kind of on the cheaper side. And I was like, I want these Legacy 92 hats, because every Legacy 92 hat I've ever had has always been the most comfortable hat. And so we worked at it, and we finally got those, and pushed those out. Those sold out pretty quick. And actually I was hoping they'd be here today, but they'll probably be here tomorrow. Another order of them. So hopefully those will sell out pretty quick as well.
I'm sure they will.
They are absolutely the most comfortable hats you can find. I've yet to find one better.
No, I totally agree. And I've got quite a substantial baseball hat collection, and that's definitely one of my favorites. Now, you also have a subscription service. And I don't remember seeing this before. Maybe it just kind of slipped my mind. But tell us about that and where people can get your coffee and merchandise.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the subscription, we just updated or changed the software and updated. We were using PayPal, which was great, but it wasn't as user friendly when it came to like making adjustments and stuff. So we updated it to a new subscription software called Paywhirl, which will allow people to. So if you say you ordered a bag of Taste Like Freedom and you want it, maybe you want one bag a month, or maybe you drink a lot and you want 2 bags a month, or you want a bag a week. You go and you sign up for subscriptions, and we ship them out, the day you send it, and it auto recurs. And so it hits our computer automatically. We ship it out, so you're getting your coffee on a regular basis. And but the great thing with the new software is you can go in and make changes. So if, say, you were getting it, once a week, and all of a sudden you got a backlog of coffee, which you know all about, you can go, I need to back it down to, say every 2 weeks or once a month. It's easy to do that now with going in and just a few clicks. You can get the adjustments done. Whereas before, you had to cancel the subscription, you had to resubscribe. It was just a real pain. So we updated that. So that's very, very new. Within the last, I guess, week and a half, we finally got that up. And when you go on there, we've got merchandise, we've got hats, we've got some new mugs that we just literally just got this past weekend. Some really, really cool ones. They're like the, I don't know what to call them, the Yeti type mugs that you would get. We've got the 10 ounce and the 12 ounce. They've got the One Nation symbol on it, and we've got black, and we've got a powder coated gunmetal gray. And the other thing too, with everything you buy on the website, every bag of coffee we sell, every cup of coffee, or I'm sorry, every cup we sell, $1 goes to that WLS Foundation. And so we
awesome.
help them. And so the more we grow, the more they get, and it helps them. And the other thing too is we set up a code for Coffee with Kenobi, and we actually just got this rolling up today. But any of the listeners can go on and type in Kenobi 10 in the checkout section, and it'll give them a 10% discount on everything. So definitely, if they want to get their stuff for a little bit cheaper, go on and type that code in.
That's fantastic. And this is breaking news for us too.
Yeah. A lot of this stuff is brand new. And, and we've been in the last couple of weeks, cause we've done a little bit of restructuring with the business, and, it is really starting to move forward leaps and bounds. And so we're getting a lot of things in place, and we've got a lot of great things coming too. We're starting to work on a light roast. Well, I say we've been working on a light roast. And going back to that part, I've probably gone through 12 different beans, sampling and testing and trying to find the right bean. And I have yet to find that one that I like. And we don't want to put anything out that we don't absolutely love. So,
Sure.
So eventually we'll have a light roast, probably, hopefully in the next few weeks, but
cool.
Gotta get that right bean first.
Well, yeah, we'll definitely stay tuned to OneNationCoffee.com, and Coffee with Kenobi will have all the updates on what Phil and everybody have going on. My wife asks me every day if you guys are going to have a decaf yet, so I'm sure you'll be, once you do that, I'm sure you'll get even more orders, and all be from our house the first, but that's really great. Thank you, Phil, for sharing all that with us.
Yeah, thanks for letting me share it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So be sure to go to OneNationCoffee.com, and you can find that also through the show notes for this show as well. We'll go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, Tom will be with us to share the latest Star Wars news. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
Greetings. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
If you were to say to me, what do you love the most about Harry's razors? It would be really easy for me to answer: convenience and comfort. When I need to shave, which is every day, I need to make sure that I've got razor blades in the house, that I've got shaving cream. And because of Harry's, not only do I have that, but I have some of the best stuff you can possibly imagine. Harry stands behind the quality of their blades. They know that switching razors is not an easy decision. So they created a trial offer, which is harrys.com/CWK family. Harry's founders are fed up with overpaying for expensive razors with unnecessary features. They know that a great shave comes down to great blades, made with sharp, durable steel that lasts. That's why they bought a factory that's been making some of the highest quality blades in the world for over 95 years. By selling directly to you over the internet, Harry's can offer their blades at a price much lower than the leading brand, just $2 per blade compared to $4 or more. And there's a quality guarantee. If you don't love your shave, let Harry's know within 30 days and they'll give you a full refund. Now you might be wondering, all right, I am totally in, but what are the details of this trial offer? Well, it's a $13 value trial set that comes with everything you need for a close, comfortable shave: a weighted ergonomic handle, 5-blade razor with a lubricating strip and trimmer blade, rich lathering shave gel, and a travel blade cover. And that's all a lot of great stuff that you need, and it's so much cheaper than anything else you'll find anywhere. Listeners of my show can redeem their trial set at harrys.com/CWK family. Make sure you go to harrys.com/CWK family to redeem your offer and let them know I sent you to help support the show. We are back, and after all this talk about coffee, we are in a very comfortable place because we're Coffee with Kenobi, right? We like to talk about Star Wars, like to drink our coffee, we like to think, we like to smile, and no one helps us get in that mood better than Tom Gross. Tom, welcome, welcome, welcome. What's going on in the world of Star Wars?
Oh, well, let's lead off with the San Diego Comic-Con. Why not, right? Because it opens in 1 month from this recording, right?
That's right, and I am going to be there. I'm very excited. In fact, it really hit me today. Wow, I'm going to Comic-Con. I mean, my wife and I have been talking about going to San Diego and getting little things ready for the show, and then it sort of hit me. Wow, I'm going to Comic-Con. It's kind of crazy.
I am so excited for you, but I want you to make sure you're taking note of these exclusives that are rolling out, because I'm telling you, there are a few of them that, a certain newsman wouldn't mind having. I'm just going to put it that way. Hey, last week we previewed a couple Hasbro Black Series exclusive sets, and this week it's time for some Funko Pop exclusives to be announced, as well as a new general release from Funko as well. The Clone Wars are the focus of the Funko Pop world this week. General Kenobi gets his own pop along with Jedi Knight Anakin, and and his Padawan Ahsoka Tano. Grandmaster Yoda rounds out the general release, while Hot Topic will offer a unique Ahsoka figure.
What's the difference, by the way, in those two?
I had a feeling you're going to ask, but if everybody else can look at the Coffee with Kenobi website under Star Wars News and Info tab, but this is what I noted. It's a costume difference. I do not know the official titles of the costumes, but there is a definite difference, and the pose is a little different as well between the two.
Steven, did you notice at all?
I haven't even checked them out.
Let's see. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Tom. I just thought, oh, you know what? I see the difference already. The one that is the Hot Topic one is Ahsoka from Clone Wars, and it's got the very first costume she ever had when she first moved. And then whereas the other one is her with the two lightsabers towards the end of Clone Wars. So it's kind of
the one you linked on the on Twitter?
Yes. Okay. Yes. This is cool.
Yeah,
go ahead. You were talking about Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. I mean Grandmaster Yoda.
Yeah, well, I love those two Ahsokas. I think that they are fantastic and definitely add to our collection. But let's talk a little bit about the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive. Attendees will have access to a pretty awesome Cad Bane, if you scroll down on the page a little ways, an awesome Cad Bane pop, and a pop from Solo, a Star Wars story with an Imperial Stormtrooper. All of these, as we've mentioned, can be previewed on the website under Star Wars News and Info. I'm just curious, which one of these do you plan to add to your collection?
Well, I definitely have one that I have my eyes on. It's one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars in any particular genre, whether it be comics, books, or movies. Any guesses what I'm going to say?
Kenobi.
I was going to guess Kenobi as well.
No, although I will say if I do get the Obi-Wan Kenobi, it is a really beautiful looking one. I think I will try to get Jat to sign that because that would be pretty cool. No, it would be Cad Bane. I love Cad Bane. I think he's the coolest bounty hunter right behind Bosk or Boba Fett. So that's definitely one that I will have my eyes on. What about you guys?
I will definitely be buying the Obi-Wan.
I'm not much of a Funko person, but I'd probably go with the Stormtrooper one.
It's cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got a neat look to it.
It's very, very, very sharp.
That is cool. Yeah.
Tom, I know you. Yeah, I know the girls will want Ahsoka. What about you?
Well, if I could choose beyond the Ahsokas, because those two are tops on my list as well as my family's, but I like the General Kenobi. I think he was probably my favorite Clone Wars character.
Yeah, he's great.
Choice.
I mean, yeah. We're not called Coffee with Jar Jar, right? Exactly.
Yeah, and he just every time he was on an episode, I was so interested in what he would bring to the show.
Totally agree.
So, all right, well, moving on to our next story, we've heard all the news that Star Wars Galaxy's Edge will open in 2019 with a summer opening at the Disneyland Resort, with a fall opening at the Walt Disney World Resort. In an article on StarWars.com, 5 key announcements were made at a panel discussion at the Galactic Nights event at the Walt Disney Resort in May. One of those reveals is that the setting of Galaxy's Edge will be Black Spire Outpost, which is mentioned in Solo when L3 notes that Lando never would have found it without her. And then another announcement is that I never get this name quite right. Nien Nunb, is that right?
Nien Nunb.
Okay, very good. And our favorite pirate, Hondo Ohnaka, will make a return in some way as guides or parts of the story. And another announcement is, well, why am I covering this when I've got the author of the article right here with us? So, Dan, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Sure, I'm ready.
Tell us about the other 3 announcements, or just give us the juicy details of the panel at Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah, the panel was tremendous. There was a whole show we did a couple of weeks ago that covered all this, but I didn't really do much commentary, which is why I'm glad that you're bringing this up. But one of the big things that they told us at Galactic Nights at the Galaxy's Edge panel was that they're building 2, count them 2, gentlemen, life-size AT-ATs. And I'm not talking about, to scale forward, or I'm talking about when they talk about the description of AT-ATs in the official guides, they're building 2 of them. They're building them in Japan. They showed us images of the feet and the amount of detail that goes into these things. Oh my goodness. And I believe they're tied into the second attraction that's going to be at Galaxy's Edge. The first being the Millennium Falcon, where you get to pilot that. But this is when we're going to take on the Resistance. And they're AT-ATs. I mean, what could be more exciting than that?
Now, Dana, can I ask just for clarification?
Yeah.
Is that 2 per park or 1 for each park?
2 per park.
Oh my gosh.
So there's 4 that they've made total. And then they're building a brand new Resistance troop transport. So the AT-AT thing got the huge response from the crowd. But I think what maybe got as big of a response, if not bigger, is that they're building these creature little alcoves where the point is to make you feel like these Star Wars creatures are real. And they're building loth cats. They're making loth cats that are going to be created through robotics and puppetry or what have you. They haven't really said the behind the scenes of it. But they're going to make these loth cats feel like they're real creatures. And people are going to love that. People went wild when they announced that too. And Doug Chang is one of the people who's overseeing the design of these creatures, topiaries that they're going to have. And it's really, really exciting.
Well, I'm excited.
Can't wait for that. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I know.
That is going to be awesome. Hey, let's wrap up with our final story coming from the comic book world. Marvel Comics announced this week that the final issue of the Poe Dameron comic will be coming this September. According to Marvel's September solicitations, Poe Dameron will conclude with issue number 31, written by original series writer Charles Soule. Angel Unzueta will bring the art to the book, and the original series artist Phil Noto will provide the cover. Marvel offers up this summary for the final issue. We see what may be Black Squadron's last mission as they desperately attempt to find allies for General Leia Organa's decimated resistance. It's been one heck of a ride, but all stories must come to an end.
One of the reasons I'm glad that you are having this on the show is that this series is not canceled. The Charles Soule and our Twitter feed in Comics with Kenobi and Matt were talking about the difference. This show wasn't the series wasn't canceled. There was nothing wrong. It was just the show or the series, the storyline had come to an end. So it's going to come to a close, and it's been a wonderful run, Stephen. I'm assuming, I'm pretty sure I know this is correct, but you've enjoyed the Poe series as well.
Yeah, I've been reading it since the beginning, and it's really fun.
It is. He's got such a way with Poe. And Poe, I think this is like a good example of Star Wars storytelling at its finest, because he doesn't take bits and pieces of Poe and make that what he is. They allow Poe to have multiple, emotions and responses to things. And he's still got certain things that make him unique in who he is, but he's allowed to be very fluid in his behavior. And I think Charles Soule is such a terrific Star Wars storyteller anyway. So this is definitely going to be something that's missed.
Yeah, but I think it's a good out because it's had a really good run. And I could see them, moving things around and have time for other stories now. You don't want to play something out too long.
No, definitely not. In fact, that could have been a real trap. And really, there's not too much more they can go because it took place, before The Force Awakens and now a little bit after The Last Jedi. But there's not a ton of room that you can wiggle with and kind of break the realism of it. So I totally agree with you.
Stephen, I really like what you said about that because I agree. I've really enjoyed this Poe Dameron series, but it does have a feeling that it's kind of coming to a conclusion. And why not finish up where it belongs instead of letting it trail off? And it does once they cross the line into they passed over The Last Jedi. I kind of wondered, what could be next that's not going to reveal too much. So this is a nice spot. And I am curious. I mean, I think we're all curious what's going to happen with Black Squadron.
It'll be interesting to see because, there's not a lot of the Resistance left. And Charles Soule, and we already talked about how good of a storyteller he is. His Darth Vader series is completely outstanding. Probably one of the best comics out there, period. Not just in Star Wars, but just comics in general. And he's a cool guy. Like, I got to interview him a little bit for StarWars.com. Once they announced that they were going to do some stories that were after The Last Jedi. So I have a feeling that besides Vader, we'll see much more of Charles Soule in the world of Star Wars. This will make for a nice omnibus when they collect the entire series in a hardcover. I'm assuming that they'll probably do that. It'll be really, really good stuff. Tom, thanks so much, as always, for bringing us the latest in the world of Star Wars.
Oh, you bet.
We will go ahead and take another break. When we come back, we will have some emails that we're going to look at, and we're also going to talk a little bit more about Lando, since he is the focal piece for today's show. And we're going to look more specifically about the big sabacc game between Lando and Han. I guess there are two of them, really, but we're really going to focus just sort of on what goes on psychologically with those two and that exciting Star Wars card game. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Coffee with Kenobi.
One Nation Coffee is the official brew of Coffee with Kenobi. Four lifelong friends had this idea that grew into some of the best coffee you will ever have. It smells amazing and tastes even better. Check out www.onenationcoffee.com to set up a coffee subscription and help your morning get started off the right way. Getting ready to pull the trigger on that summer vacation? Miles Fan Travel has you covered with signature service and expert advice to help clients maximize their vacation time and dollar. They help your family enjoy everything the Disney theme parks and cruise lines have to offer, help plan every detail, and share invaluable tips to help make the most of your family's Disney dreams come true. Check out www.mousefantravel.com today and get your Walt Disney World or Disneyland vacation started off in Coffee with Kenobi style. They are definitely the official travel agency of Coffee with Kenobi. We are back, and before we wrap up the entire show, we've got some great emails that I want to look at. But before we get to the emails, I want to look a little bit more about Lando and specifically about sabacc. And one of the things about this, and on our huge review show, which has been very well received, and I really appreciate everyone's comments and feedback on the review show. But one of the things we talked about is what exactly happens at the end for Han to win the Falcon. Stephen, what was your impression of how Han played that last hand?
Okay, so I'm assuming we're focusing in on that cheater card that Lando's always pulling, and that hand
Yes.
pulls it out, and he mentions it, saying, if you would have had this, you would have won. And then he sets it to the side. He doesn't put it with his cards. And then it's like his hand that he had was the winning hand. That's the way I took it.
Yeah, so that I thought it was pretty interesting, and I'm assuming sabacc is kind of like a poker, but yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting how he kind of snaked in front. And I knew that was going to happen whenever when they gave the hug or whatever, that was going to, they foretold that pretty well. But yeah, as for the storyline of it, it's I guess that makes sense because I mean that's how you always heard that Han got the Falcon was he won in a sabacc game. So
right. Well, see, and I had thought when I saw that Han puts down his hand. It's kind of tricky to say Han and hand so close together so frequently, isn't it? But when he puts his hand down, I thought he was saying, "Oh, here's my cards that I have so far." And boom, here's the last one. And it was the cheater card, basically. Because I guess I sort of think of it as 21, although we're sabacc, the big number is 23, positive or negative 23. But I kind of looked at it as, if this was blackjack, like he puts down, 20, and then he puts down the big card at the end, which would be the ace. You know what I mean? That's just how I thought it. I didn't think of it as, oh, by the way, here's your cheating card. Because if he had done that, then he would have lifted the curtain up. We've looked in the veil of Lando's legacy and would have caused more than, losing a ship, but possibly Lando's life, because it would mean that everyone there knew that Lando's been cheating all this time, and they would have actual concrete proof. So I didn't feel like he was actually doing that.
I think it kind of was, but I think it was done in a sense that, like, I mean, if you'd have looked at it like an old Western, there'd have been shots fired.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think because it's, I guess because of the side people, they were no longer in the game at that point. It's just between Han and Lando. I guess maybe everyone just let it go as, okay, it was a cheat. But I didn't see it as him holding that card as his last laydown card. I think it was just like, this card's out of the game. You're welcome.
Yeah, Steven, I've seen it a couple times now, and I paid a little closer attention when I watched it again, and it seems pretty clear that card's he's just showing it off. He's not actually playing that card.
Interesting. So so if we're going with the Old West motif, is that going against the Kenny Rogers school of thought, where he's basically, really in poker, you're not supposed to show what cards you didn't have, because then that lets everybody know, how you play, when do you bluff, when do you not bluff? Although I suppose this was the last hand, but still, doesn't that kind of follow you around your card playing reputation?
I think he was just kind of showing
and
off. He just wanted to showboat to Lando, saying, hey, I got you.
Yeah. Especially, when he's got his ostentatious, tropical island cape, and he's just very much in his element. It was funny at the press conference when Donald Glover was talking about that was his favorite cape. And Alden Ehrenreich was kind of teasing him about, what do you mean that's your favorite cape? How can one cape be more functional? He goes, well, this one was a little bit shorter, it was a little more breezy, and it's actually something I could actually wear. And it was pretty funny. And you can very much see that play. It very much plays out on screen between the two of them as well. Like, I noticed that, Han and Lando have a very interesting chemistry because there's so much between them, yet they're still friends. And there've been a lot of reasons why they probably shouldn't be, but I think they're very much kindred spirits, as we talked about at the top of the show as well. So it's pretty cool that the one thing that they share is the Falcon, as well as a penchant for both getting each other into serious trouble and also helping each other out of that as well. So it's pretty cool to see sort of that exchange, both at the beginning, adults are talking here, versus at the end when Han bests him, and he makes it look easy.
It's kind of audacious of Lando when you think about it, because he cheated in the first game, and Han caught on to it that he was cheating. And then they play cards again, and Lando just does the same thing. He thinks, Han's got to be stupid to think he can outplay me when I'm going to cheat. And he just never catches on that, Han's actually smarter than what he thought he was.
Yes, yeah, there's arrogance versus Han's got a swagger, but I guess he's got some arrogance about him, but he's not arrogant. Lando is, and he very much underestimates Han to his detriment, really.
Yeah, he loses his droid, he loses his ship.
Yeah. And the whole, I don't know if you caught this, Phil, but I didn't catch it till the second or third time I saw it. But at the end, before they run to Enfys Nest towards the end of the film, when he says to Han, "I hate you," and Han says, "I know."
Yeah, I actually didn't catch it, but now that you say it, I do remember that. But
nice callback to Empire.
I didn't think that. Yeah.
The scene where there's
a couple of them too. Like,
yeah, go ahead.
I would say when he's flying, at one point he says, he says, what is it? In the original series, is it like, this is a bad idea, or I got a bad feeling about this, and then in this one he says, I got a really good feeling about this, and I was like, wait a minute, it's a different outlook, but same.
It's a nice spin on
type.
Yeah, very, very, very clever.
So let's go ahead and take our last break, and we will return with some of your emails. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are the podcast you're looking for. This is.
Before we get to email, I want to thank our CWK sponsors, One Nation Coffee, Harry's Razors, and Mouse Fan Travel. Please support them the way they support our podcast. Remember to listen to new and archive shows of Coffee with Kenobi wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Stitcher, Spreaker, Overcast, Blog Talk Radio, Player FM, or of course our website, www.coffeewithkenobi.com, or wherever you enjoy listening to your favorite shows. And if you listen to the show through iTunes, please leave us a review. We are also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, and Tumblr, and we'd love for you to check us out there. Be sure to listen to our CWK family of shows too, including Legends Library, Rebels Reactions, Comics with Kenobi, and Lattes with Leia. Please leave a review for each of their shows as well, and be sure to subscribe to each of them individually, as they all have their own feeds now. From Tim Bungaroth. Hi Dan, I listened to your spoiler-free review of Solo, and I wanted to give you my 2 cents about your complaint that Han doesn't change over the course of the movie. While I know you're searching for psychological and emotional change, I also think you're overlooking his physical circumstances. Put simply, Han starts off the movie as a scum slave with no tribe or family. He yearns for a life of freedom by obtaining a starship to which he can travel the galaxy and be a pilot. He gets mixed up with Tobias in order to achieve his goal, and by the end of the movie, he has A, found his family or tribe, turns out to be Chewbacca, not Kira, who chooses Han over his own species, B, won a ship, and C, achieved his dream. I also think that there are changes in his perspectives on people and relationships which culminate in him gunning down Beckett in the chest before watching Kira leave him. But if a coherent narrative is defined by the journey of how a character gets from point A to point B, then Solo has it in spades, or whatever symbol to grace the box cards. In my humble opinion, Solo is the best Star Wars film since Return of the Jedi, and most in line with the spirit of A New Hope, but that's a debate for another day. May the Force be with you, and go Bears, best Tim. Tim, thank you for your feedback on that. I have gotten a lot of feedback in our show on Solo, the Star Wars story, and my ideas that Han doesn't change, and of course, show number 129, we talk exclusively about that. I still don't think he's changed, but yes, his circumstances have definitely changed. He definitely has more perspective, but he hasn't completely evolved as a character as the classic tradition of change in a piece of film or literature. That being said, I'm incredibly glad that it's your favorite since Return of the Jedi. In fact, I think that's really cool. My brother, who you heard on our preview show, it was his favorite movie since the original trilogy, which I think is great too. I love that people love it and people are having fun. Look, I love it too, and I want to see it again and again. I can't wait to get it on Blu-ray or digital. As always, Tim, thank you. And anytime you can get a difference of opinion, I love that. I really love that so much because you can get different perspectives and see how people perceive things, and you'll learn something, and I love that. Thank you, Tim. From Jonathan Cohn. Hello, Dan Z and Coffee with Kenobi. I wanted to ask you guys about the direction of Star Wars. Personally, I have loved every film put out so far, and I absolutely love the idea of the standalone stories. However, I watch and listen to a variety of Star Wars YouTube shows and podcasts, and I do believe that there might be a significant block of fans who really contributed to the boycott of Solo because of Kathleen Kennedy's direction. Personally, I think she has acted as a wonderful steward of the Star Wars universe and should be commemorated for her work. However, I do believe that the animosity shown by many of fans can be only quelled by Kathleen's retirement, firing, and the promotion of a different leader. For example, I believe that if Dave Filoni was promoted to president and Pablo Hidalgo was promoted to head of the story group, then that might quell some of the protests being launched. I believe that Filoni has shown a consistent growth in his ability as a storyteller, and I believe that he respects all areas of fandom and would be able to bring Star Wars back as an entertainment juggernaut. What do you guys think of that? Thank you for reading this, and may the Force be with you. Thank you so much for email, Jonathan. I think there's some good food for thought here. Personally, I think Kathleen Kennedy's job is very safe. And as much as I love Filoni and Pablo, I don't think that that would happen. Dave likes making animation. He likes where he's at with Lucasfilm. He's got a really good personality and a passion, and he's an amazing storyteller, and he learned from Lucas himself. I think he's very happy with where he's at, and that's just from my observations. I have no inside information on that. And as far as head of the story group, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that needs to happen, personally. They all are amazing at what they do, and there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. I don't think that any of the concern about the box office had anything to do with Solo or the quality of the film at all. I think it's because it's an overcrowded summer movie-going theater experience these days. And then, you've got The Incredibles and Infinity War and all kinds of movies out there that people love. It's just a lot. And we're very, very close to the release of The Last Jedi, both in theaters and in Blu-ray. So I think it was probably just very, very close to one another, and that's probably why we saw some of a drop-off. And I really do believe that if Solo was released in December of this year, it would double or triple what it's made so far. And that all being said, I'm not worried at all. I believe very much in what they're doing, and I have a lot of faith and excitement about the future. From Ray Kinstrom, this was a Facebook message that he sent to Coffee with Kenobi. I was going to post this on the Facebook page. Still very new to CWK. If my son, who's 7, and I were to attend one day at Star Wars Celebration, which day would you suggest? We are in Yorkville, which is about 15 minutes from McCormick Place. Thank you in advance, and I'm very much enjoying CWK. Well, thank you so much, Ray, and welcome to the Coffee with Kenobi family. If this were me and I was deciding just going one day, typically on the 4-day celebrations, Sunday is a very, very low-key day. Saturdays are always the really, really busy ones. Saturdays used to always be the Rebels Day, but now that Star Wars Rebels is not anymore, I'm not sure how they'll handle that, whether it will be with the new animated series Resistance or what have you. I know now that it's 5 days, Thursday's the preview day, and there aren't going to be any panels or things like that. Just going to be about the merchandise and visiting and walking around. So that might be an interesting day to go, although it's the first day, so you never know. And I think Sunday and Monday will be more laid back because they're towards the end, and Monday will probably feel more like most Sundays do. As far as things are winding down, there are still panels, but everybody's kind of doing last-minute shopping and last-minute visiting. So if it were me, I would suggest probably leaning towards Sunday and Monday because it would be less traffic. Historically, Saturdays are the busiest for conventions anyway, so hopefully, Ray, that helps a little bit. Thank you so much for your email.
Well, gentlemen, it has been an absolute pleasure talking with both of you. Go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you and your excellent contributions to the world of Star Wars, as well as where you can get the best coffee in the galaxy. Steven, let's start with you.
Well, you can find Roco Depot in just about everywhere, and it's under Roco Depot. So you got rocodepot.com, and we're on Twitter, Facebook. Check us out. We do a podcast and review on Thursdays, so you can find out new podcasts you might want to listen to. And on Wednesdays, we do a roundup of all the 501st Legion events, so you can check that out.
And we will have a link to that in the show note, absolutely. And Phil, what about you?
So you can find us at onenationcoffee.com, and then on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, One Nation Coffee, and One Nation is one word. Except for Twitter, it's actually the number 1, and then Nation Coffee. We couldn't get the other one. So, but yeah, onenationcoffee.com, and that'll actually link you to our social media, and any questions you might have, you can also contact us directly through that.
And we will have links to that in the show notes. And don't forget to put the code Kenobi10 for 10% off for when you sign up for your subscription. Because I'm telling you, once you get a taste of this amazing coffee, you're going to love it. And I said this on a previous show, but whenever I travel, I've been very fortunate to do a lot of traveling for Star Wars events, especially over the past 6 months. And whenever every morning I always think, I don't get to have One Nation Coffee with me. So you got to get this thing franchised, buddy. We need some One Nation Coffee throughout the world.
Yeah, definitely. We'd love to get there, and I think we will eventually.
There you go.
It's growing. So.
It certainly is, and rightfully so. Well, guys, thank you so much. And I want to thank each and every one of you for listening to and supporting Coffee with Kenobi and for contributing to Star Wars Conversation. We will be back next week with 2 new co-hosts and more Star Wars talk. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along.